Afternoon and good morning. This is Mark Johnson from Loyalty 360, welcoming you to our ongoing Meet the Speaker series. Today we have Paul Sage, who is Product Management Director at Aimia. Paul, nice to meet you.
How you doing? Good to meet you too.
In your 2 decades of international experience, what are two of the major developments in the loyalty marketing space?
So yeah, there's an awful lot that's happened in 20 years, and I think the biggest thing that's happened is that loyalty programs have become ubiquitous. When I first started, it was really the hotels and the airlines that were driving this out. I think we all know from the plethora of loyalty cards in our wallets that every single business now is looking at some way of creating a loyalty with its customer. I think in the last say 2 to 5 years, the big changes have been real time. A lot of people were talking about real time, and now that is a reality. I think the whole social and mobile revolution has brought that upon us, and it's a good thing. And analytics. I mean, analytics now is at the very heart of what we're doing in marketing and in loyalty specifically as well.
Paul, one of the things we're seeing right now within the loyalty space is there's a number of people redoing their programs. Best Buy announced yesterday they're going to a 5% rebate. You've seen Staples and others do the same thing. What is driving this change in program development, this need to refocus on the programs? You obviously are seeing a lot of that. What do you think is driving that?
I think there's a couple of things driving that. I mean, margins and competitiveness. Margins are being driven down. Competitiveness in markets is very prevalent, especially for the likes of a Best Buy. So the first challenge is that loyalty effectively is a percentage of that margin that they're giving back. So they have to look at ways to really influence customers in a different way. And then the other thing that's coming in is this social revolution. So, I'm participate on Foursquare. I love becoming the mayor of, the water cooler in the office. I mean, it's great fun and it costs nothing. And so how do we leverage that game process, that gamification process, and make it more enjoyable experience in loyalty? And it's not just about the amount of money that I'm getting. How do I get preferential service through that loyalty program? So I think these are the questions that are being asked. And also it is the margin pressure that is making people look at it and go, what can we do to make a better experience and at the same time make it better economics for us in our program?
What are a few of the main differences between loyalty marketing domestically and abroad?
Yes, it's interesting when you fly in from abroad into America, and as I did for many years, I've worked for this company on and off for decades, and you just get a taste of what it is to actually be in the United States. It is an enormous country, and I know we hear that all the time when we're outside of America, but when you're actually here, there is a substantial shift and a difference in the way Americans see themselves and the domestic market. I think for me, the real difference from a technology point of view and from a loyalty point of view is real time is actually here. It's in pockets in Europe and it stays within country, and I think that's the challenge. Is innovation tends to be within pockets within country in Europe, and it doesn't travel the borders very well. Asia's slightly different, but again, it's not ubiquitous because the marketplace is not ubiquitous. There's big differences in high net worth and middle income families. In America, smartphone prevalence, it's one language, one currency. I know there are other languages in America, but essentially you can get away with English, you can get away with dollars, and you're talking to 300 million people with the same uniform borders. There's no border control. So that makes a massive difference, I think, when you're trying to innovate and then roll that out across the country. Then the other side of that is America has a large infrastructure already in place with these very big players, and that can act as a hindrance to innovation. So small players can get in and disintermediate, whereas larger players are having to, upgrade 10,000 outlets or 20,000 outlets. That's a big cost. So that's kind of the two sides I would see in the kind of innovation space in America.
What is the biggest misconception about data analysis?
So yeah, it's an interesting question. I worked in analysis just in an analysis company for about 3 or 4 years, and it made me smile. You kind of discover things about the human condition and psychology. Facts and statistics are not the human being's forte. I think we rely on intuition and we rely on gut instinct an awful lot. And so when you're sitting there with statistics coming off your website interactions that tell you that you only have to get one more purchase from this subset of customers and you'll double profitability, people go, no, that's not true. And when we're dealing with data analysis, which is on pretty much the whole transaction set, versus research, which is on a subset, it's interesting how research is still held very highly, and data analysis, which is actual real behavior on all customers, is not necessarily always viewed the same. So I think that's changing now. In the last couple of years, I think people are believing data and their analysts' statistical models more, but there is still a lot of feedback which is that can't be right. It can't be true that this data is saying this, rather than relying on gut instincts. I think that's the biggest misconception I see in the data arena.
With all this talk about big data, how do you define small data?
Yes, it's. I think the challenge is that we all know that data has grown exponentially, and it is the digital age, social media, mobile, etc., that is driving this growth of data, and it's quite worrying because we are now data rich, but information poor, and that's been mentioned many times. I think for us as loyalty marketeers, we are looking for very specific pieces of attribute data around a customer. I don't really need to know tons and tons of information about you personally to be able to predict your behavior and treat you better. So when you're in that face-to-face contact, I obviously need to have that kind of personal information, but I really need the patterns and what are the key pieces in your behavior over time that are those patterns that influence you to be we can influence you to be a good customer, or that you're probably going to churn or become dormant. And so these small pieces of information, but in real time, which is what we can get, linking them together over time, so that we know at this moment in time, if we put the right offer to you, you will change behavior into a positive, best customer behavior, not just a bribe to get you to buy. And I think that for us in aggregate becomes big data. The other approach is download Facebook's and all of the interactions off Facebook for everybody and try and churn through it for patterns, which is probably not feasible. And that's kind of the big data approach of throw everything in there and see what you can see. There's a little bit of that we have to do, but really for us it is the journey, the customer journey, and linking that.
What is one of the 10 most important customer experience moments?
Okay, so I'm going to let you into a secret of one of them, and that's the customer life shift. I think as marketeers, we know about these life shifts. We've got data that can help us see those life shifts. So the biggest example is having a child. I think having a child or getting married, these are major life shifts, and they change your behavior significantly. The way you purchase, where you go, the amount of leisure time you have, all of these things are impacted by these major life shifts throughout our lifetimes. And we can see that data. And I think for us, it is not just seeing it and using it as an opportunity to send, when you move house, a whole bunch of DIY and hardware pamphlets for a week and then forget about that. I mean, if you've moved house, that is something that I can communicate with you about as a life shift for a couple of years for all different products. So how do we make it more temporal in the way that we think about this, rather than just getting a data feed and reacting to it, but actually adding that to a profile and then communicating differently to the customer over time? That for me is the kind of the major pivotal moment that we need to address in loyalty marketing and marketing generally.
What immediate actionable insight can attendees look forward to learning by attending your webinar?
So it would be buy something from Aimia, but the real answer is that most of the information that they need to address this is probably sitting within their systems already. They have tools that they can access this information right now. I think the big challenge is getting that into something that's synthesized and quick so that people can take action with it, rather than spending weeks to gather this information. So for us, it's presenting the moments, people then saying, I probably can get 5 or 10 of these moments straight out of the box from different sources, but I need to bring it into one place that I can do something with it. And then the next question is, who is going to do something with it? So I hope that when people see that, they won't sit there and go, there's no way we can get this information. It is available and it is there. It's just, how do I bring it together in one place? I think that's the actionable step that's maybe a bit more difficult.
Great. Well, Paul, thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to the upcoming webinar.
Thank you very much. Good to speak to you.